You reach for something simple, bananas, bread, milk, something aggressively normal. You glance at the price, mentally approve it, and then, for just a second, you wonder if the number blinked. Not like a sale tag flipping, more like the price updated. That uneasy feeling isn't paranoia, it's the sound of retail quietly becoming software. Because more stores are rolling out electronic shelf labels, and those little digital price tags aren't just there to save employees from changing paper stickers. They're connected to systems that know the time, the traffic in the store, the inventory in the back, and how badly people tend to want bananas at 5 p.m. And once prices can change instantly, the question stops being can they and becomes when do they? This isn't about bananas. Bananas are just the gateway drug. What's really happening is the slow migration of surge pricing from apps into real life. And today, we're talking about how demand algorithms are quietly moving into grocery aisles, and what that means for how much you spend without realizing it. If you've ever opened a rideshare app and watched the price double because other humans also wanted to go home at the same time, you already understand the logic. High demand plus limited supply equals higher prices. That math has been working great online, where prices are expected to be fluid and nobody is emotionally attached to the idea of fairness. Grocery stores, however, used to operate on a different social contract. The price was the price. It didn't care what time it was or how tired you were. It definitely didn't care how many people were buying chicken thighs at once. Electronic shelf labels quietly tear up that contract. Once the price tag becomes a screen instead of paper, it stops being static and starts behaving like a dashboard. Now the store can adjust prices based on inventory levels, time of day, foot traffic, promotions, supplier costs, or whatever variable the algorithm finds interesting that afternoon. And yes, stores will tell you this is about efficiency. Of course, they'll say it helps reduce waste, it allows faster discounts on expiring food, and it helps keep prices competitive. All of that is technically true, but it's just not the whole story. Because once a system can lower prices automatically, it can also raise them automatically. And it doesn't need to announce that decision like a human would, it just, well, updates. The reason this feels unsettling is because it violates one of the oldest consumer expectations, that the shelf isn't watching you. Online pricing always felt abstract. It happened somewhere in the cloud, mediated by apps and checkout buttons and tiny text nobody reads. In a grocery store, pricing used to feel physical and fixed, like gravity or fluorescent lighting. Now, it's software wearing a name tag, and software is very good at noticing patterns. For example, stores already know when traffic spikes. They know when office workers flood in after 5 p.m. They know when weekends hit, when storms are coming, when certain items become hot for no obvious reason. An algorithm looks at that and doesn't think, wow, people are tired. It thinks, demand is inelastic right now. Which is a very polite way of saying, they're buying it anyway. That's where surge pricing sneaks in. Not aggressively, not with flashing alerts. Just a few cents here, $1 there, wrapped in the comfort of normalcy. Most people won't notice a 4% increase on bananas at 5 p.m. They'll just feel like groceries are mysteriously more expensive than they remember. Which is perfect, because confusion doesn't trigger backlash. Shock does. Confusion just quietly drains wallets. This is where the tech part gets interesting. Electronic shelf labels are often connected to centralized pricing systems, which means pricing decisions don't even need to happen at the store level anymore. They can be regional or citywide. They can be updated remotely by people who have never stood in that aisle wondering whether they really need organic. That's not inherently evil, it's just extremely powerful. And power plus opacity tends to get creative. What makes this especially effective is timing. People shop differently at different times of day. Early shoppers are price-sensitive and deliberate. Late shoppers are tired, hungry, and emotionally compromised. That's not an insult, that's biology. At 5 p.m., you're not optimizing, you're surviving. And algorithms love predictable behavior. They don't need to squeeze you hard, they just need to squeeze you consistently. That's how small price shifts become big revenue without ever feeling like a headline. You don't rage quit the store, you just sigh and swipe your card. Now, to be fair, dynamic pricing can work both ways. In theory, you could see prices drop during slow hours, late-night discounts, midday deals, algorithms rewarding flexibility. In practice, discounts tend to be framed as promotions, while increases quietly blend into the background. Sales get bannered in something just short of a marching band, while price hikes get an awkward silence. That asymmetry isn't an accident. It's design shaped by human psychology. People remember getting deals. They forget paying slightly more when they're distracted. And grocery shopping is one of the most distraction-friendly activities on Earth. Your brain is juggling lists, budgets, nutrition, time pressure, and the existential question of why cereal is suddenly $7. A few cents slipping through isn't a failure, it's expected. This is where personal finance quietly intersects with tech policy. Because once dynamic pricing exists in physical spaces, the line between fair price and optimized price gets blurry. Should food behave like plane tickets? Should essentials fluctuate based on demand curves? Those aren't technical questions, they're social ones, and algorithms don't answer social questions. They just execute objectives. If the objective is revenue optimization, then fairness becomes a side effect, not a goal. What's fascinating is how fast this transition is happening without much public debate. Electronic shelf labels look harmless. They look modern. They look efficient. Nobody looks at a digital price tag and thinks, ah yes, variable pricing infrastructure. They think, cool, no more crooked stickers. That's how big shifts sneak in, dressed as convenience. This isn't a future problem either. Major retailers are already experimenting with this tech. The hardware is cheaper, the software is better, the incentives are obvious. Once stores get comfortable adjusting prices dynamically for inventory, it's a very short step to adjusting them for demand. And demand spikes are incredibly predictable, especially during commute hours, on paydays, major weather events, and much anticipated holidays. Your grocery bill already changes for these reasons. It's just been slower and more visible. Now it can happen quietly and instantly. So what does this mean for you practically? It doesn't mean panic or avoiding stores with digital tags. It means being aware that pricing is no longer a fixed background feature of shopping. It's an active system responding to behavior. Shopping earlier might save money. Shopping later might cost more. Flexibility becomes financial advantage. That's not dramatic. It's just the same logic apps have been using for years now standing next to the apples. And once you notice it, you'll start seeing it everywhere. Dynamic tolls, tickets, subscriptions, and now, groceries. Money is becoming time-sensitive in places it never used to be. Not because someone hates you, but because software noticed you're predictable. Bananas at 5 p.m. aren't more expensive because they're better bananas. They're more expensive because you're tired and still buying them. And that's the quiet lesson here. The future of pricing isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It just updates while you're looking at the shelf, wondering if it always cost this much. This is Neural Nickels, where we talk about how technology doesn't just change money, it changes the moments where you don't realize money is changing.